How did you get interested in looking at this particular topic?
I didn't get interested in parental investment, parental decision making until I myself became a parent. I was really focused on the consumer behavior of women and why women buy so many shoes and high heels that men really don't know anything about or could care less about. So I began to get interested in why women do these things. And I spent about 10 years doing that, and then I became a parent. And then I had my son, and then I had my daughter, and it wasn't until I had two of them, and I don't even know if they could start uttering words before I saw them fighting with each other, give me this, and getting upset when one would get a toy or a special favor or a little bit more macaroni and cheese than the other one. And the one who didn't get or was missing out would be really quick to point it out and would scream, bloody murder. I'm not getting more than this person. I'm not getting as much as Mikey's getting, my daughter would say. Even if it was looking at, who is getting more of a special treat, Kool-Aid, he has more than me, And so I thought, well, if kids are raising holy hell about who gets what, and they're really good at tracking it, down to that extra teaspoon of a special drink, then maybe parents are playing favorites and we don't really know it.
How did you go about taking a look at this?
Well, the first thing I did was I asked parents, do you favor one of your children more than the other? And so we surveyed hundreds of parents who had more than one child. And overwhelmingly, parents say, no, I don't. I treat both of my children equally. I love and care for both of my children. And so these same parents, when I ask them, well, do you track what you spend on each of your kids? And they said, well, no. Well, once we're not tracking these things, this opens the door for bias and favoritism to come in non-consciously, even without parents really being aware that we're doing it. And so I thought, well, enter the research. And so a research question was born from that. Because we have heard that when gender entered the picture for me because of what we were talking about before. Daddy's girl, mama's boy. Then you also know that there is sex matching favoritism. So the dad going out to buy sports equipment for the son, or the mom going out to buy dresses and shoes and jewelry for the daughter. So the question really started there. It was pretty simple. Which is it? And is there any sort of bias that enters the picture? And the first place I started was looking at gender favoritism. I think that's because I had a boy and a girl. And I wanted to see if that had any role in the favorites that parents play.
And from your research, does it?
Well, turns out it does. Turns out there's a strong sex or gender matching bias such that moms give significantly more in terms of, how we measured it was in terms of spending money, in terms of giving beneficial resources to their daughters, whereas the reverse is true for dads. So dads spend more money on their sons compared to moms.
Did you have any numbers on how much of a difference it was?
In one study, we ran it at the zoo, and we set it up so it was a back-to-school raffle. So we had parents that were entering the zoo with 2 or more children of varying genders. And they thought they were entering a raffle, and we had 2 raffle boxes set up. And one was a raffle to win a back-to-school backpack and lunchbox and thermos for a boy. And the other one was a raffle box to enter to win a back-to-school backpack, lunchbox, thermos for a girl. And we were interested to see which box parents put their raffle ticket in because they only got one. So we basically led them to force a choice here. So they had a forced choice to make: am I going to invest in my son or am I going to invest in my daughter? And again, these are parents who had one of each, at least. And of children who were elementary school age, and what we found was that mothers, almost at an 80% rate, 80% of the time, put their raffle ticket into the box to win the girls' back to school backpack, and fathers put their raffle tickets into the boys' box to win the boys' back to school backpack. And they were both almost at 80%. So this is in terms of data, this is a very statistically significant difference. And there was a significantly higher probability that moms were going to put into the girls and dads were going to put into the boys.
What does this suggest?
Well, it suggests that we do play favorites, even though we don't like to think that we do. Because when we go out and we ask parents, it's really hard to say, no, or yes, I do. I do favor my daughter, or I do favor my son. So this is a bias that is happening without, basically under the radar, without parents being aware that they're doing it. And because we don't track it, so we don't keep a line item of, Lucy got this, Michael got this. I mean, if it's a big thing, I recently took a trip with my son and we went to go see the Packer game, and I knew that this was going to be something that I would have to pay back in kind to my daughter, because it was obvious to me. I knew it was going to be, but there are little things that we do where we're at the store and we might, buy something for our daughter, or what we were measuring was actual investment. We were having parents enter a lottery to win a treasury bond worth $25, and they had to tell us with the name which of their children they were going to give the treasury bond to. And these were parents who had children, one of each gender, just like me. And so this wasn't dad's buying sporting equipment because they know about sports, or mom's buying a ballet outfit because she knows about ballet. This was an investment for their child's future. And again, when we force the choice, and this is in research where we can really see these revealed preferences come out. And what we found was that, again, the fathers were more likely to write in the name of their son at the expense of their daughter, whereas the reverse was true for the mothers. They were writing in their names of their daughter at the expense of their sons.
Is this just financial bias, or does it translate into other areas as well?
The research suggests that it does sort of bleed over into other areas. So we find it when we simply ask parents, if you could invest your resources in only one of your children, who would you invest your resources in? We see it come out there, or when they're splitting hypothetical amounts of money, and even when they're making decisions that involve real money. So my guess would be is that we would see this come out in other areas of investment. For example, what we found when we were doing some investigative work, when we just first asked this question, is that in countries where men control the resources, the household spending, particularly the spending decisions, boys tend to be favored and have more access to more opportunities, even better health care. But in households where mothers, women, make more of the spending decisions and control the household income, daughters tend to be favored. So more opportunity, greater access to health care and education. So that has potentially huge implications. And men do historically have tended to control the resources and the decisions about where money goes, which might explain some of the reasons why boys and males in general have tended to be favored across history.
Parent behavior changes or tips. Do you have any that you can suggest for parents?
Certainly, a lot of these biases, and this is just one in human behavior repertoire, there are many. But as soon as we know about them, the data reveals them, to the extent that we want to correct for it, we can. We can find workarounds, knowing that this is a tendency that we do have. And we say we don't track, but maybe if we do a little bit better of a job at tracking how we're spending our money. And certainly, if my daughter has a keychain and my son doesn't, it's not the end of the world for him. But when it comes to parents making some of these bigger decisions about, maybe, when to see a doctor, what kind of tests to run, what educational programs, extracurricular activities their kids should be in, that's where it could have bigger implications down the line. And so that's where knowledge of, this bias and taking the data into account and making sure that maybe we're checking twice about the equal access that both of our children have. So planning for their future. And we do tend to be as fair as possible when the decision is at the fore, meaning it's right there in front of us and we're thinking about who's going to get what. But when it's more distant in the future, maybe planning out estate planning or one of your children comes up and begs to be put into dance, and then you put that one into dance, and the other one never asked for it, at least right then. So you don't think about having an opportunity that might be available to the other one, but you might want to be more conscious of that. Although usually in my household, as soon as one knows of the extra dance lessons given to the other, the one will say, well, then if she gets to do that, I'm going to be going into karate, or I get to, I want to, whatever it is, have this extra thing. If she gets that, well, then I get to go to the toys section at Target,
If one asks, look for opportunities for the other?
That's what I try to do, knowing that not even necessarily that my data suggests that I might be favoring my daughter. It's funny because I think I favor my son, and we kind of talked about this, but I wonder if that's one way that one thing I tell myself to make me feel better about the little bit that I'm siphoning off to my daughter more than my son, because we do these tricks in our head to make it easier for us to just exist day to day. So that might cover the tracks of the additional investment I give to my daughter by my feeling that my son is more of a mama's boy and my daughter is more of a daddy's girl. It makes us feel better about the bias that actually comes out.
Is this only while kids are young or up till age 18, or would you see this with adult children?
We did not look at that, and that's a really interesting question. But we did look at parents and non-parents in a couple of our studies where we had those who were not parents just imagine their daughter or their son. And we saw this sex matching bias come out even in non-parents who were just imagining having a son or a daughter. So it's possible that instead of this being specific to parents, this is just a more general gender bias that we see. So this would be women are just more likely to do favors or invest in other women, and men are more likely to do favors for or invest in men. And so, but this also has ramifications for how parents spend their money, and it might also be seen in the workplace. So how promotions are given, and time off, depending on if your boss is a male or a female. So it could just be a sex matching bias, and that's what we think it is, but the data are still out on that.
Is there anything I didn't ask you that you would want to make sure that people know?
Well, what people usually ask me is, well, why are parents doing this? And we don't have a definitive answer for that, but we did look at identification. So we looked at how strongly the parents identify with their children, and we asked them questions like, the parents in our study, we asked them, do you see yourself more in the eyes of your son or your daughter? And we found that moms are more likely to say, I see myself in my daughter. And they were less likely to say, moms were less likely to say, I see myself in my son. And that seemed to be what was the underlying factor that was driving this gender matching or sex matching effect. But there could be other factors out there, and we're kind of just in the process of looking at those now.
The one report that the child trends researchers sent to me was the savings bond. Was that U.S. and India?
Right. The decision was about a U.S. Treasury bond, so even our parents in India were making the decision about that, but they would be sent the bond, and so it would still translate there. But yeah, we gave them the rate of return, and so that was the study that I was talking to you about, where they made that decision, and they had to. So these were parents who had a boy and a girl, and some had two boys and a girl, but we wanted to make sure that they did. And in this study, we had, I believe it was parents who did have children who were dependent, and so that raises the question of, would we see it in older children? And I think that we probably still would. I have to say, even parents who are now having adult children, we would still see this gender bias come out. But yeah, we did. So I think that study in particular was important because it's not a hypothetical choice. It's not a back-to-school backpack. It's an investment for your child's future. So knowing that this bias comes out even in critical decisions like that, that's where we can take the data, learn from it, and find a workaround to maybe keep better track. Because we have parents saying, I don't play favorites. Then we have parents saying, but I don't track what I'm spending either and how I'm making these decisions.
Do you know how many parents were involved in the U.S. and India?
Actually, almost 500.